Fellas, we are back and it is a Francis Ngannou fight week in MMA. I wasn't sure I'd ever say those words again. We also have a UFC Apex event, which has some sneaky little fights on it. We'll get to that a little bit later, but let's give a round of applause to the PFL real quick because this is a fantastic fight card. I'll be honest, I am no PFL hardcore. I've watched a handful of their events. There's a handful of their fighters that I'm a big fan of. I think this is a real moment for the PFL to showcase what they have. Starting with Francis Ngannou. That's your hook right there. You have Chris Cyborg, Larissa Pacheco, there's your line. And then we have Johnny Eblen, Fabian Edwards. Sinker. Hook, line, sinker. They got me. And I'm sure they got a lot of other MMA fans who are looking at the Apex card and going, this out of the two is a better card. Which it should be. It's a pay-per-view event. You have Francis Ngannou headlining. It should be. My only thought is for the PFL in their current standing, it's not enough just to have a great card. I think for the UFC it is. Like the Sphere, for example. You look back on that card, a lot of money, huge marketing. Valentina Shevchenko, Alexa Grasso, kind of a dud. Sugarshot O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili. You didn't get that wow moment. But you're able to look ahead to Max Holloway, Ilya Taporia and be like, oh fuck, I can't believe this has happened. Like they have that sort of momentum. The quality of their cards are so high so often. Your fights don't necessarily have to deliver to keep the fans engaged. Just an interesting spot for the PFL. I mean, this is a big card, a big opportunity for them to really showcase what they've got. And they stacked it accordingly. Now they just need the fights to deliver. And I'm hoping for them like a Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffith type moment where you just sit there and go, wow, what a fucking fight. And it starts at the top. Francis Ngannou, Hernan Ferreira. There's a little piece of me, and this piece wouldn't have been there a handful of months ago, half a year ago, that says Francis may be beatable. You know, when this fight was first announced, when Hernan knocked out Ryan Bader, I think the notion was still Francis is gonna roll through these guys. Ryan Bader is way past his prime. The level of competition that Hernan has is nowhere near the level of competition and the championship level that we've seen out of a guy like Francis Ngannou. Him dropping Tyson Fury, that belief builds. But then he runs into Anthony Joshua and took a nasty knockout. And it brought him back down to earth a little bit. And all of a sudden, this fight becomes a little bit more exciting. It feels like there may be a chance. The chin is not indestructible, and we're talking about heavyweights. It feels like the tides have shifted just a little bit. It feels like he could lose, which is exciting because you want it to be competitive. I don't want him to go out there and steamroll somebody, and he still may. I think the odds would say he still will, but there's an air. There's just a little piece of you that goes, maybe not. Maybe this big old Brazilian, maybe he's got something. Maybe there is something. Maybe Francis Ngannou isn't this world beater anymore. But then you remember who you're talking about. It's Francis fucking Ngannou. One of the baddest heavyweights on planet Earth. Arguably the current #1 heavyweight on planet Earth. But there's a little piece of me that goes, can Hernan shock the world? Where I didn't feel that 6 months ago. So I think, I'm not saying it's good for Francis, but it was good for the PFL that happened because it brings more draw to this card. And then you give him Chris Cyborg, Larissa Pacheco under it. Chris Cyborg, one of the best female fighters of all time, fighting Larissa Pacheco, who's been on a tear, has a win over Kayla Harrison, and then you get a rematch, Johnny Eblen, Fabian Edwards. I just rewatched the Fabian Edwards because they fought before, and Johnny Eblen beat Fabian Edwards via knockout, nasty elbows. Once he got him down and pounded him out, it was pretty quick. Johnny Eblen's a bad motherfucker, but Fabian was competitive. This is Leon Edwards' brother. He's got good stand-up and he's got fairly good takedown defense. You know, you work with a guy like Leon Edwards your entire life who's got to wrestle off Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington and guys like that. I'm sure they've shared some tricks, but the pressure of Johnny Eblen is just unstoppable. But through 2 rounds, in my opinion, a very competitive fight. I'm genuinely excited for this fight card. My only gripe with PFL right now is their championship situation is so fucking weird. You know, there's like 3 different belts floating around. Johnny Eblen and Fabian are fighting for the Bellator belt. Chris Cyborg and Pacheco are fighting for some other belt. There's also the league belt. It's like there's so many belts floating around. It's hard to even decide who's the best in PFL. But a great card nonetheless. This could be a real launching pad for PFL if the fights can deliver. And then we have the UFC Apex 99. You know, this is a double screen type of day, baby. It's it's gonna be a good time. We have Anthony Hernandez versus Michel Perira. It's just a fun fight. Let's just be honest about it. It is a fun fight. 13 and 14th ranked in division. Michel Perira, anytime he's fighting, craziness follows. This is the same guy that's doing backflips into submissions, and he's just a wild boy. You gotta watch the man. That being said, he's been on a fucking tear. Started at 170, was on a 5-fight win streak, and then seemingly was having trouble making the weight. He fell out of a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight, which would have been fantastic. I would have loved to see that fight, but then moved up to 185 and put it on the boys. I mean, his last 3 fights, he's had a first round submission, 54 seconds. He had a first round submission, 1 minute and 1 second. He had a first round KO, 1 minute and 6 seconds. Like, his last 3 fights you could watch in a fucking TikTok reel. That's how dominant Michel Perira has been in his last three fights. And he's just so fun to watch. And on the flip side, you have Anthony Hernandez, who's a fun fighter in and of himself. His last fight against Roman Kopylov, to me, and I may be in the minority, I look at Roman Kopylov as a world beater. Like, I truthfully believe that kid's got the potential to be a title challenger or future champion of this division. But on that day, he ran into Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, who is as game as they come, does not give a fuck, will keep coming at you. I think the first round, Roman stuff like 9 takedowns. Anthony just kept coming, finally got to his back in round 2 and got under the chin. Finished him right there. Anthony Hernandez has been on a little run of his own. I think he's won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights in a row. His last loss was to Kevin Holland, who's a savage. So no shame in that. Just before that, you have Rob Font, Kyler Phillips, which is another fantastic fight. Kyler Phillips looked so fucking good his last time out against Pedro Munhoz. Such a dynamic striker, fast, in and out. Good hands, knees, kicks. I mean, looked fantastic, but I'm not quite ready to count Rob Font out yet. I know he's had a tough go in his last handful of fights. I think in his last 5, he's 1-4. But the guys he's lost to, Jose Aldo, former champion, Chito Vera, who he looked really good against, honestly, had a lot of moments in that fight. I think his face afterwards didn't make it look as close as the actual fight was. Chito had some big knockdowns towards the end of multiple rounds, but Font's hands look great. He gave us a y'all must have forgot moment against Adrian Yanez, which was just incredible, just disgusting knockout. And then he lost to Corey Sandhagen and Davison Figueiredo. Corey Sandhagen, one of the best in the division. Davison Figueiredo, former champ, currently tearing up 135, has looked great. This is more of the Adrian Yanez matchup-ish, right? Where it's kind of the young guy that's on the rise. This isn't Corey Sandhagen. This isn't Jose Aldo. It's Kyler Phillips, who, if you ask me right here, right now, I would say is going to win the fight, but we could get another y'all must have forgot moment out of Rob Font. I mean, you assume this is going to be a stand-up battle. Both guys are most comfortable on the feet. I'm not ready to count Rob Font out just yet, but I think Kyler, if he can build off of his last performance, he's in a really, really good spot, and it'll be a huge win for him. And then we have kind of my fight of the night. I'm a Jake Hadley stan. I don't even know why. He's just a fun little fighter. I don't know the guy he's fighting. It's his UFC debut. I don't give a shit. If you want to know who the people's champ is on this card for me, it's Jake fucking Hadley. His last fight out, I think, was at a catch weight. He came in short notice and put it on this little Irish fella. I just love him. The way he fights, I originally saw him on the Contender Series, and since then, I'm like, this is my fucking guy. So that's just a sneaky one to watch out for, because I don't know why. I love Jake Hadley. He's a fun fighter. Keep your eyes on that. But we got a weekend of fights, fellas. We got a real weekend of fights. The PFL's in a real big spot. They got a real chance to garner a lot of new fans. And the UFC's business as usual. And Apex offering with some very good matchups. That's all I got. I'm excited. We got a double screen Saturday. Lego.